In this second lecture on our transition to the 20th century, I want to begin with reviewing the stylistic characteristics that we're studying here. The organic curvilinear lines of Art Nouveau are rejected for rectilinear forms, symmetry, and abstraction. We'll also be talking about the Gesamtkunstwerk. This is an artwork that encompasses every type of aesthetic expression. But the key thing we want to argue here is that Peter Behrens achieves this in the graphic design and architecture that he produces for the AEG company. AEG is the Allgemeines Elektrizitätsgesellschaft, or General Electricity Incorporated. It is run by Emil Rathenau. In 1881, Rathenau, very forward-thinking, purchases the German rights to Edison's electricity patents, including the light bulb. This is the basis of a wildly successful company that still exists. In 1907, he merges with Siemens. But the thing that's really noteworthy about Rathenau is that he recognizes that a company isn't just the products, but the way that the products appear and the way the company itself appears in the public eye. And for this reason, he hires Peter Behrens. Behrens worked with Josef Maria Olbrich on the architecture of an artist colony in Darmstadt, Germany. Olbrich, we learned about him when we looked at the Secession House in Vienna. So that gives you a sense of Behrens' aesthetic history. He is also the director of the Düsseldorf Academy of Applied Arts. So he's trained as an artist, he's focused on architecture and crafts. In 1906, however, he is hired by AEG to create a unified design style for all of their buildings, facilities, and graphic materials. And so what we see here is this reification of the Gesamtkunstwerk in the first consistent corporate identity. To reify something is to take an abstract concept and make it concrete. And it really happens in a brilliant way here. We take branding for granted, right? But Behrens is the person who really applies this fine arts concept in the corporate world. He's wildly influential in the early 20th century. His apprentices include Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, all of these names that will be very familiar to us as we move into Unit 2. So here's a picture of Behrens in his office around 1913. So this is 6-7 years after he's made the first designs for AEG. And he says, design is not about decorating functional forms. It's about creating forms that accord with the character of the object and show new technologies to advantage. So it's not about decorating, right? It's not about ornamenting, but rather it's about creating a form that aligns with the character of the object. Let's now look at the graphic design that Behrens produces for AEG. What we see here is a perfect example of this transition to the 20th century. So notice how very rigidly symmetrical this is. You can divide it down the center vertically and it will be the same on either side. Notice also that it contains the same typography that Behrens produced for that we saw on the exterior of the turbine factory. This all brands AEG in a way that we really haven't seen before. I also want us to pay careful attention to the use of geometric forms. So this entire thing is constructed of rectangles and squares and circles and triangles in order to create a space that on the one hand is very, very abstract, but on the other hand sort of recreates the interior of an urban world. So thinking back to the Wiener Werkstätte and the type of spaces that they were designing for their patrons, an electric light would be at home there because they don't want to hide the modern conveniences. They want that to be central to it. And that's what Behrens does here too. He puts the light bulb right in the center and celebrates the way that it would illuminate an interior space. So let's look too at the really clever way he's using circles here. So all of these little circles along the edges, they all are forming the geometric shapes. And yet at the same time, they are making the light that's emitting from the central light bulb. And it's just so elegant the way that it alternates between making a geometric space and then visualizing what's invisible, the illumination provided by this light. And this is why people get really excited about Behrens, is that he manages to take what could be kind of an elite and esoteric strategy and apply it to something very practical. And that's why it's really so successful for AEG, and it just flips a switch in which all companies want to have this type of quality design to promote their products. So the last thing I want to show you is the electric tea kettle that he designs. This is also for AEG, and you can see it again has the honeycomb shape that we associate with AEG, and those little dots all along the edge. So he's branding everything. All of the products that they're making are branded by Behrens.